According to Reporters Without Borders, which is one of these international non-governmental organizations sort of keeping an eye on the planet, the United States now ranks 99th on the Press Freedom Index. In other words, there are 98 countries whose media is more open and honest and free from government and corporate constraint than the United States. Now, when you consider how many nations there are on the entire planet, that's an abysmal score for a nation which purports to have a free and independent media. And of course, we know that's not true. That's why you're here at Republic Broadcasting, because you know those other networks are very much under government control and influenced by not only our government, but by a certain foreign government. We'll be talking about that a little bit more later in the show. And various corporations and their owners. We know that media consolidation placed control of corporate media content into the hands of those corporations that own those huge chunks of it. Speaking of which, my top story today, I have to respond in depth to this absolutely embarrassing video from Fox News yesterday. And we have it posted to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com if you want to take a look at it. And we've headlined it, Fox News Wipe Them Off the Map Moment. Now, this is a short video clip from Fox News where the two prostitutes have two different claims they make, both of which are deserving of serious criticism. And the first one is they're out there saying that the United States is the only nation on earth with the moral authority to wage preemptive strikes against other countries. Now, that's a new one. The reason is they were trying to make a big deal over the fact that Iran said they would feel that they had a right to attack other countries who were threatening their sovereignty, and they were making this, Iran wants to preemptively strike. Well, it's bad for them. It's okay for the United States because we're the good guys. We've got the moral authority because we're not trying to build hegemony, which is kind of odd when you consider we've invaded 10 countries on 2 different continents, actually more than 10 now. We've got troops now in 4 African nations that we're just now finding out about. So we've already invaded a dozen countries on 2 continents, but we did it all from the most pure of benign humanitarian motives, so that makes us the good guys, and so forth. So they're out there with this idea that the United States has this moral authority to attack countries at will, but no other country has that same authority. This is kind of the Americanization of this notorious comment Ariel Sharon made that Israel may have the right to put others on trial, but nobody has the right to put Israel on trial. So that kind of a double standard. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back and continue talking about Fox News. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're talking about this horrible piece of video coming out of Fox News where they're out there saying that the U.S. has the right to preemptively attack other countries, but nobody else is allowed to do that. How imperial can you get? How arrogant? But it gets even better than that, using the word better a little bit loosely. Okay, remember back when it was alleged that Ahmadinejad had said he would wipe Israel off the map, and the American media went totally bonkers and screaming, "How dare you, you're the new Hitler, how can you talk about wiping another country off the map?" Forgetting that Shimon Peres had been saying exactly the same thing about Iran all along. We will wipe them off the map. We're not, it's okay for Israel to say that, but Iran, we're going to do all that bad stuff. So now we got Tucker Carlson, who is saying on Fox TV that Iran should be annihilated because they're all lunatics. Now, let me back up here a little bit. First of all, Ahmadinejad did not actually threaten to wipe Israel off the map. Basically, what he said was that Israel, because of its own corruptions and its own internal failings, would vanish from the pages of history, which is something a lot of observers think is true, including this one. But that's a very passive, observational kind of point of view as opposed to, an overt call for action to erase Israel off the face of the map. The translation was botched up intentionally by Memory, which is now known to be basically an Israeli propaganda front that provides free translations to the Western media. And the Western media, which is bribed by Israel to always report the news to favor Israel, and there's a video that documents that on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com today too, just print it without question. So Ahmadinejad didn't actually say that. But here we have a videotape of Tucker Carlson speaking our language on our news TV network, screaming for Iran to be annihilated. Not just to kill Ahmadinejad, not to kill Khumani, not to destroy the Iranian army or even destroy their power station and their medical isotopes. He's talking about annihilating the entire country because they're all lunatics. Actually, given his ideological roots, perhaps he should have been using the word Untermenschen. They're not human. They don't deserve to live. He wants to annihilate the entire place. So where is the hue and cry at this comment? I mean, the media just went totally ballistic over Ahmadinejad's rumored, alleged threat to wipe Israel off the map. Now you've got Tucker Carlson saying the entire nation of Iran should be annihilated, including all the people, wives, children, dogs, cats, everything should be annihilated. And everybody seems to think, yeah, that's okay. Kind of a real double standard, kind of a hypocrisy thing going on over there at Fox. Anyway, by the way, Tucker Carlson, if you really, truly feel that Iran should be annihilated, here's your parachute, here's your M16. We ran out of those desert camo cover-all things, but we got you one of these leftover bright day-glow orange ones left over from Abu Ghraib. Just put that on. Watch your step climbing into that transport plane, and we'll call Tehran and tell them that you are on your way to annihilate Iran all by yourself. But after that whopper you folks over at Fox News told us about Saddam's weapons of mass destruction, you will forgive us if we sit this one out and choose to keep our children here at home where they are safe from being blown to bloody bits in another pointless war. And they've reached a point, I think, of hysteria where I think the audience, even the most diehard Fox News audience, is instinctively pulling away and saying, wait a minute, where are these people going with this thing? What's really happening? And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And all right, I want to get back to the situation about the propaganda where they're trying to sell this war with Iran to you, the American people here. So the Washington Post ran this story about a telex from 1992 where Iran was attempting to purchase fluorine gas, which could be blended with uranium, in a nuclear program. And they're trying to basically put the worst possible spin on there that they can. See, they were hiding this for 10 more years. Actually, no, they were not. All right, remember, Iran has signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and allows IAEA inspections. And the IAEA was just in there again. Now, they tried to make a big stink about wanting to visit this military base. And remember, under the rules of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the IAEA is only allowed to inspect areas where the nuclear materials are. And if the nuclear materials are all accounted for, and they are, they're not allowed to just go wandering around the country willy-nilly poking into closets. Now, as a courtesy, Iran did let them onto this military base in 2005, and in 2006, the IAEA reported that they had found no traces of nuclear materials on this base, and that what they had seen in the satellites and thought might be related to some kind of a nuclear program turned out to be something else completely different. So they've already been there. They've already inspected it. Iran is under no obligations. They're just trying to make a big deal about this. So now we've got the Washington, and they're not getting a lot of traction with it, by the way. So now the Washington Post is out here with this telex from 1992 saying they're trying to buy fluorine gas. Ooh. Now, first of all, before we go too far into the whole nuclear aspect of this thing, fluorine gas has a lot of industrial applications. If you have any porcelain in your home, in the bathroom, the kitchen, whatever, fluorine gas is used in that manufacturing process. It's not an unusual material. Fluorine gas, short leap from there to the fluoride in your toothpaste and your drinking water, if you are unfortunate enough to be living in such a community. But here's the situation. At the time of this supposed telex, and I have no doubt the telex is real, but it's completely benign because Iran had signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which gives it the right to pursue nuclear power plants, medical isotopes, industrial applications for radioisotopes. And yeah, if you're building a power plant, you've got to build the fuel rods, and the fluorine gas is used to fabricate the nuclear reactor fuel rods. It's no big deal. They're allowed to do that. The purchase of fluorine to make uranium hexafluoride as the feedstock for fuel rod fabrication is perfectly consistent with the construction of a power generating station, which they're allowed to have. Now, under Article 4 of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the United States is supposed to be in there helping them to build it, which is a great way to make sure they don't have a secret bomb factory hidden under the reactor, the way Israel does over at Dimona. So it is the United States, rather than Iran, that is ignoring its obligations under international law and in violation of the treaty. Not only in ignoring its obligations under Article 4, but in using the threat of force to coerce Iran into surrendering their rights under that treaty, which the United States has signed. So the Washington Post is out there trying to put this sinister interpretation on this telex about fluorine gas. They're just trying as hard as they can to sell you this war. Why? Because Europe is going to come apart starting this next month. And the United States government really thinks a new global world war is going to keep you all distracted so you don't realize it's the U.S. government that's messed up the place. Between repealing Glass-Steagall and refusing to prosecute for the mortgage-backed security fraud and continuing to this very second to loot the American people to try and sort out all this financial mess. That's what they're trying to do. Now, there has been a late development just before we went to airtime. There's this story, breaking news, Israel backing down from Iran threats. And, of course, your first reaction is, huzzah, huzzah, we've succeeded in backing them down again. Maybe, sort of, kind of. Let me tell you what the story is saying and then tell you a couple of different possible interpretations. The story is going basically that Netanyahu has overplayed his hand about Iran, terror, bomb, to the point where even his own political party is abandoning him in Israel. And we know that was a real possibility. They were saying 3 months ago that if Netanyahu didn't succeed in getting this war going, that he was on his way out because of opposition domestically to many of his other policies. So apparently, this in a slap in the face for Netanyahu and for Lieberman, who's still out there screaming at Russia, don't you dare tell us we can't invade other countries. Basically, they're saying that Shimon Peres is going to come over and meet with Barack Obama before Netanyahu does, and even before Obama speaks to AIPAC. And they're basically saying that the Knesset has decided Netanyahu's job performance has been very poor, and that his bellicose statements, his belligerence, is harming Israel far more than they can really afford at this time. So they're saying they're going to back off from the thing, and they're going to tell Obama, you can go ahead and back off, blah, 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 blah. Maybe. We know that the U.S. government needs a war someplace to distract from what's going on in Europe and how it's going to drag down Wall Street. So another possible interpretation would be that having goaded the world or goaded America and Europe to this stage of confrontation with Iran, Israel's now going to say, we've changed our mind, we're backing down, we want peace. Then they get the false flag and say, look, we were backing off and then Iran attacked us. That's another possible interpretation. I would like to put the best possible interpretation on there that we all bluffed them back down again, but I'm not willing to bet more than 25 cents on that. Mostly because this war is in the U.S. government's interest as much as it is in Israel's interest. So I'm not sure what this means, but we are reporting it. I'd like to take it at its face value, but after all these years of observing the U.S. government in action and Israel in action, I'm not entirely convinced. Now, as I mentioned before, we're not even really sure how many countries we're fighting wars in because we have this bad habit of being told that we're already invading in countries long after we've gone in here. And Rear Admiral Brian Losey, who's the top U.S. Special Operations Commander for Africa, has basically said U.S. troops are already in place in Uganda, Congo, South Sudan, and the Central African Republic. It's the Africa Corps. They're sweeping across the African plains with the Rommel and the tanks and all that. So why are we in these nations? These are not exactly hotbeds of terrorism. You know, they're trying to say there's a group down there, the LRA, PDQ, BFD. It's conquest. Forget about what Tucker Carlson said about the U.S. government is not after hegemony. I don't know, I keep messing that up. Yeah, country after country after country. The U.S. is after hegemony. They're after world conquest. That was the whole policy papers coming out of the Project for the New American Century. That the United States was the world's only remaining superpower following the collapse of the Soviet Union, and that there was nobody that could stand up to the United States military, and that the U.S. ought to act like it and simply conquer the entire world and force our standard of living, or our way of living, actually our banking system, down everybody else's throat at the point of a bayonet. And so now we're finding out 4 more countries added to the list of places where the U.S. is at war in. It's already a world war. We're fighting a dozen wars in 2 different continents under U.S. military doctrine. That's already a world war, but it's still low-key. It's a low-intensity world war. It's kind of a lazy summer afternoon world war kind of a thing. But if they go into Iran and Russia and China come in for real on the other side, then yeah, it's a full-blown World War III. It will go nuclear at some point, because at some point the U.S. is going to realize they can't win it conventionally, and that's when the little brass keys get turned, and it's going to be a really bad day for everybody.